Hello everyone, my name is Mila. Welcome or welcome back to my channel. You're at my book nook. And today I have a video that's sort of a follow-up to a video I did quite a while back. I've been wanting to revisit it because yes, there are some things that I've acquired since then and some things have stayed the same and some, I guess, perspectives have shifted a little bit or have gained newer perspectives for certain aspects of, I guess, big books. So I, as I said, made a whole video about reading big books and how to go into it, sort of the tips, the tricks, mentality kind of shifts, that kind of thing. That rhymed actually. And I've been wanting to revisit, as I said, because there's some things that changed, some things that stayed the same, a lot of things that have evolved. So I wanted to sort of, go back into it and kind of, continue on or add on, have this as a sequel, so to speak, or like a secondary episode that you can watch. And I will link, the original video in the description if you want to check it out. So just to, catch people up, I talked about splitting books into sections, finding editions you actually like, because I think that's an important part of reading a big book. If you don't like the edition, then you're not looking forward to reading it, then it could really feel like a slog. Switching formats between physical, audio, and ebooks, which is something I still stand by. Just giving yourself grace with big books. I think that's such an important thing that I think people really push themselves to almost the brink, and then it just kind of their want to read the big books crumbles. And if you don't read big books, I don't want you to take this as you're not a good reader. If you don't read big books, then you do you're still a reader. But if you do read big books, or you want to get into reading big books and you want to further expand your mind as well as extend your, as someone called, reading stamina, then these are sort of the tips and tricks that I have in my first video. And this will, as I said, sort of expand on that. In that video, I was younger than I am now. And I guess I sort of focused more on like the big fantasy books, the big fiction, fantastical fiction books, just like big fiction books in general. But in this case, I want to shift it slightly to more so classical and also ancient history. So at the time, I don't remember if I was running my book club, but I think that also kind of shifted my perspective in a sense. And also this year, I do want to get to 100 books in a year, which is not something I've ever been able to do since I think starting my Bookstagram and book related channels, because so much, mentality, so much of my mental space goes into making content for that. And I just get into reading slumps quite a bit, but that's a whole other thing. So as I said, naturally, some of my thinking has shifted. Also, if I'm looking this way, I have like a little script. And if I'm looking that way, I'm just trying to make sure that I'm in frame. So just to, quickly, again, reiterate what kind of holds up, as I said, the e-reader trick. Number one, I can literally carry like thousands of books on like a tiny piece of plastic, basically. So it's out of its case, but this piece of plastic has so many books. I have so many books on here, both fiction and nonfiction and classics as well. I'm reading this middle grade called Gremlins, The Gremlins, I guess, and it's definitely out of my comfort zone. I'm at 25%. Well, let me just show you. Like, I have so many books, but it just, you don't feel it. So I have like Anna, hold on. I have Anna Karenina, I have another version of Anna Karenina. I have Jane Eyre. I have just like so many books, and like you wouldn't know, right? That this carries so many books. I truly have a library in my pocket, basically. So again, something that about like big books being on a smaller screen. Back then, I believe I had like a Kobo Clara HD. I still have it. It's literally right here. I'm giving it to a friend, but it's 6 inches versus this is like 7 point something inches. So there's definitely quite a big jump, but regardless, highly recommend looking into an e-reader. Switching formats when you're losing steam. I don't do this as often anymore. I don't think I ever did it as often, but it's definitely a good trick if you're really feeling like you're in a rut. It still works. It'll work. And another one that I stand by continuously for the rest of my life is DNFing. DNF without guilt. Put the book down. You can say that you're soft DNFing it, that you will come back to it one day, and you can. You totally can. You can totally change your mind. No one's going to, prosecute you for changing your mind about a book. It just might not be the right time for it. So DNF without guilt, soft DNF, hard DNF, doesn't matter to me. But do so without guilt. Life's too short to not enjoy the books you're reading. In the original video, I said something along the lines of, it's not a race, there's no deadline, relax, you're not in school, da 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 da. I stand by it. However, in the back of my head, I'm sort of like in a race against myself, which is stupid when it comes down to it, because why would I be in a race against myself? Like, it's me, myself and I, like, why? But you have 100 books goal, you have a book club, you have deadlines, you're kind of, and so I've started to sort of, I guess, in a sense, ration, I guess, the big books, so to speak, because it's like, oh, if I'm reading a big book, I kind of have to concentrate on it. And if it's like 800 pages, then that's like 2 to 3 books worth, regular sized books, right? Average sized books. So it's like either I read the 800 page book, or I read 3 books in the same amount of time that it takes me to read that 800 page book. So it's kind of a slippery slope there, right? So yeah. So as I said, I kind of like ration the big books. But as I said, it's just a me thing. You can also do that, I guess. Don't do that. It's just a me thing. Here is a thing I didn't really talk about in the old video, which is translation, I think, and edition. I talked about editions, but I think that was more on like a surface level, so to speak, and I might have touched on translation. I don't fully remember, but this is specifically about classics translations. And this is also a reason why I've been collecting so many different editions of different classics, and specifically translations of different classics. Some of them are because I literally dislike the cover of the others. Some of them are because I'm looking for a specific translator. Some of them are because I'm looking for a specific edition. And usually that edition is a Penguin Classics one. Penguin Classics, as well as Oxford Classics, I'm not going to, denounce Oxford Classics. I'm not going to put it down. But Penguin Classics is the one I personally reach a lot for, which is why a lot of like this shelf, so to speak, even like here, you will see like a lot of Penguin Classics, because that is where I feel most comfortable in, especially when it comes to such a big, classic. So for example, I think I tried another translation of the Count of Monte Cristo before moving on to this one, but basically I have the Penguin translation of the Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas, and this is translated by Robin Buss. And as I said, the Penguin translations are like, they're chosen for a reason. If the translation's good and it has like the positive reviews, and it just has right things in it that a normal reader, not a scholar, but a normal, everyday reader will be able to get. That's kind of, I think, what they put into these translations. Also, similar, obviously, to the Oxford World Classics editions and translations, they have just really cool covers. I think this is just so iconic. I do have my gripes about this specific new style of editions, but we're not going to get into that yet. I'm still not sure why they changed it. I'm still so pissed about it. But also the quality of it. But anyways, that's besides the point. But it has introductions, it has notes. Usually there's a translator's note sometimes. There's also, I believe, if I remember correctly, there's stuff at the back that's like the footnotes and stuff by like chapter, which I think is very useful if you, for example, don't speak French and there's like French words that you don't know the meaning of. You can just flip to the back and figure out the meaning, so to speak. So I think that this is like, Penguin Classics is truly the best way to go. And obviously I have this one. This is the one that I read. As I said, I think I tried another version, but it wasn't really clicking with me. And then I decided to pick up, trusted Penguin Classics version. I do also have this other edition. And the reason I got this was because I really like these signature editions. Unfortunately, the only thing is that first of all, they feel fancier. They definitely feel fancier. It's like a slight matte cover compared to like these ones. These are good to like throw around in your bag. And you feel a little scholarly with these, you feel smart with them. But this one feels a little fancier. I think the paper is also a tad different. But yeah, has like a matte cover, has like pretty cool end pages, like the swords and stuff. Cool cover, as I said for like the third time. The only thing is that for this specific edition of the Count of Monte Cristo, this does not have an author for the translation. This is a general translation from like the 1800s, I think, or something like that. This book was published in 1846 and reflects the attitudes of its time. So I believe it's like an independent or anonymous translation that they chose, and because it was in the public domain, they just rebound it. They just put it in like a nice copy, so to speak, and stuff. And it's a really cool edition. The only problem is it doesn't have like an introduction, it doesn't have notes on text, it doesn't have anything in the back. It's just straight up the book. So this, I think, would be a good version to like for like rereads, because you know a lot of the story. But again, like it really comes down to like the translation. I haven't read a lot of this. I think it's quite similar to the Robin Buss translation. I haven't gone into the depths of this, so to speak, so I don't know how to handle some things that I think the Robin Buss translation handled pretty well in regards to, you know, the Count having a slave, so to speak. So yeah, I don't know how I'll handle that, but I will report back to you. But again, this is why I have multiple translations. Another example of this is one book that isn't particularly long, to be honest. Like I could read it in a couple of days if I don't annotate it, but it's just a really intimidating book because it's a Russian classic. And if you're seeing me for the first time, I am half Russian. And this is a book that my dad's been wanting me to read, although he's been wanting me to read in Russian, but I don't think it's happening anytime soon. And that is The Master and Margarita by Mikhail Bulgakov. So I got this pretty cool edition. I just love the cat on it. I think it's so funny. And this is a fully annotated translation of the most complete text of Bulgakov's exuberant comic masterpiece. I don't think it says who the translator is. Oh, translated by Diana Burgen and Catherine Tiernan O'Connor. So we do have the translations. And it's not a particularly long book. Like it's what, 300 odd pages? Yeah, like it's 300 pages. There's commentary in the back. Literally like pages of commentary. I don't think there's an introduction. There is no introduction. No. There's like a translator's note. There's no introduction, but there's like commentary and stuff like that, and appendixes and just like biographical notes and afterward. There's an afterward. Yeah, so just like a bit of extra stuff. And so because I was so intimidated to read this one, I decided to go down to a very specific bookstore or branch of a bookstore and pick up the like singular Penguin Classic edition that I found. Again, this is one of the newer rebinds, but again, I love the cat. I love the cat. Something about the cat. And this is translated by Richard Pavir and Larisa Volokhonsky. And they're very popular translators of Russian literature. They'll come up in a second again. And again, as I said, this just makes it feel a little less intimidating because, again, it has introductions, it has translator's note, it just has extra stuff to it. So yeah, I'm quite excited to read this. I've heard really good things. I've heard that it's quite funny. Although this font is brutal. This font is like so light. I have been so spoiled by my e-reader because I have this specific font where the first half of the word is bolded, whereas the rest is like slightly bolded. And oh boy. But yeah, excited to get to this. And so we continue on with sort of the translations, I guess. This is like a really big part of this, I guess, update. And I actually have 3 translations of this book, and I haven't finished a single one. But first translation I got was this translation of Anna Karenina, and this is translated by Kirill Zinoviev and Jenny Hughes. This is definitely a newer translation, and I'm not sure it has acknowledgements. I don't think. Okay, there's a translator's note, there's a preface, acknowledgements, extra material, notes on the text, notes. So it has some extra stuff, but again, it's not, I think, as thorough as Penguin Classics or Oxford Classics. And this was just because there was no copy of a Penguin Classics version at the bookstore that I was at, and I really wanted to read this. So it just seems like one of Tolstoy's easier books, so to speak. So I really wanted to read it, and this was like the only translation that was really piquing my interest. Then I have this edition of Anna Karenina that my cousin kindly got me, and I don't know who the translator is. It literally does not say. It does not say who the translator is. It does not say. It might be also another like anonymous translation. Editing Mila will tell you if there is a specific translator, because it doesn't say, which is a bummer, because I would love to know who the translator is. And it's definitely not going to be the same as the Penguin Classics, because the Penguin Classics is the Penguin Classics. Speaking of the Penguin Classics, the reason why I, talk about this one as well is because I actually got the Penguin Classics version. I got this at a secondhand bookstore, so it was only like $9. It's a little beat up because I had it in my bag, but I'm starting to love this picture and stuff, and I'm really enjoying the translation. These two, this is also by Richard Previer and Larisa Walachonsky. I think that's what it is, Walachonsky. So the same translators as the Master Margarita Penguin translation, and I'm really enjoying their translation. It's a little, I think, too lyrical for my taste as far as classical translations go, but I'm still enjoying it regardless, and I find it so much easier to read. Again, Penguin Classics, I think, just has this thing in my brain that just makes it so much easier to read. And yeah. And then lastly, sort of the last kind of chunk of this translation thing is actually going to be about the Odyssey. I would talk about the Iliad, but I don't have as many, I think, strong opinions about the Iliad translations as I do about the Odyssey. So this is my first edition of the Odyssey. This is a Penguin Deluxe edition. This is translated by Robert Fagles. He's a very popular translator of the Odyssey. This is the one that usually schools and universities would use and stuff like that. So this is the first one I got. I got it as a gift. And for years, I tried to get past the Telemachy. The Telemachy are the first 5 books. 5 books? 4 books. First 4 books that follow Telemachus, who's the son of Odysseus. So we don't even meet Odysseus until chapter 5, until book 5. So I tried for years. I tried so long to get through this, and it is just it's gorgeous. It's a gorgeous translation, don't get me wrong, but it's just so dense. It is so dense, truly. I think I would be able to get through it now, to be honest, because I'm older and hopefully wiser, but it is so dense for me. However, I asked a friend on Instagram, like, hey, what would you recommend as someone who just cannot get past the Telemachy? Because I think we all know that the Telemachy is kind of boring. We want to get to, the adventure part of the Odyssey, right? That's the whole vibe of it. So she recommended me the, again, Penguin Classics translation specifically by E.V. Ryu. And the reason why this translation is, I guess, so distinct from Fagles especially is because it is actually a prose translation. So for those that don't know, Odyssey and the Iliad are originally epic poems. So a lot of the translations that we have, especially in English, are very poetic, whether they have a certain, poetry kind of line stipulation, so to speak, line length and, rhyming scheme, so to speak. I don't think any of them have particular rhyming schemes. It's mostly the syllables, the syllable count. So iambic, pentameter, dactylic, hexameter, whatever. Iambic pentameter is Shakespeare, and dactylic hexameter is what we have from the original ancient Greek, right? That's what the original text was written in ancient Greek, and that's really difficult to emulate in English because ancient Greek has so many more words, so it doesn't properly translate. We'll get to that in a moment, why I mentioned that. So E.V. Ryu translation, his translation actually is the first Penguin Classics edition. So this book, The Odyssey, was the first ever Penguin Classic ever made. So he was the editor, I think, in charge of acquiring all these texts and stuff like that. And actually the original books, I'll show you my vintage edition. So this is one of the original vintage-ish editions. So the reason why it has this border is to tell you where it's from. So for this, it's this brownish, reddish, I guess, this almost clay color. And that means ancient Greece. For Rome, I believe it was purple, if I'm not mistaken, and so on and so forth. There's actually a whole website about like which one's which. I'll see if I can find it again. I'll link it in the comments. But yeah, as I said, my friend kindly told me about the EVRE translation, and I got it, and I finally got past the Telemachy. And it's such a beautiful translation. And again, introduction, translation notes. It has all the things you could possibly want for someone who especially does not know a lot about the Odyssey. This is definitely something that I recommend. If you just want to know the story and you don't really care for the poeticness of it all, you know, the poetry of it all, the epicness. I mean, this is still epic in its own way, but you just want the story, right? You just want the basic story so that you can, I don't know, make conversation, or you can understand the new movie better by Christopher Nolan, or you want to listen to Epic the Musical, but you are a little intimidated because you don't know the full story and you're not understanding some things, right? Because there's some things that are noted here, you know, in the text, but some things are omitted in either the movie or the translation, that kind of thing. And lastly, to continue with, the Odyssey, this is the poetry translation that actually helped me get past the Telemachy, and that is Emily Wilson's translation of the Odyssey from 2017. And this has, once again, caused a lot of controversy, I guess, in a lot of different ways, but we're not going to get into it because I think it's an all-around silly time, the reaction to her review and all that stuff. But anyways, this is just a really fantastic translation. I know that people are like, oh, it's a feminist translation. Why is it inherently feminist if, like, she decides to switch a couple things? Like, I'm pretty sure the male translators did worse. And frankly, I'm not comfortable with, like there's a certain level of comfortableness, you know, comfort that I have when it comes to referring to different characters as, like, whores. Like, I understand it was the time, but I have limits. I have limits. I can look past it to a certain extent, but I have limits. And when you tell me that it's not correct that she decided to not use the word whore, who is it not correct for? You is not correct for the ancient text? Like, who is it not correct for? And people are really nitpicking things, and it's like, just enjoy the translation. Or don't. I don't really care. I think this is a brilliant translation. I think she knows what she's doing, and I don't think it's feminist just because it's written by a woman. I think anything done by a woman in this capacity, because she's a scholar, she's a female academic, I think that's inherently feminist. Her existence in the sphere of academia, her existence in classical studies as a whole, is a form of feminism, because 100 years ago, she would not have been able to do that. 100 years ago, classical studies was 99.9% male. 100 years ago, it was 99.9% male, white European male. So yeah, I think she did a brilliant job, and I think this poetry translation is fantastic. Again, if you know the story, I would highly recommend this one. If you don't know the story and you want to get into it, I would highly recommend the Penguin Classic translation. And as I said, the Penguin Classic translations are such a special thing, I think. And just the Penguin Classics editions are such a special thing, I think, that it's something I think that is almost always reliable, very reliable. So yeah, this is getting long. Another strategy I kind of fell into, I guess, as a process of, expanding my book club, is pairing the big books with, smaller books, or books that kind of don't fully fit within the same sphere, but kind of have similar themes. Let me just pull up. Let me pull something up. Let me pull it up. Okay. So for example, this year, right, for the Musaeum Society Book Club, I did a bit of a restructuring. What I did was I picked a fiction, fantasy, usually new release, and a classic book, right? A classic for each month. And I also picked a nonfiction list, right? The nonfiction list kind of weaves itself together. You know, there's connections between all of them, except maybe one or two that are a little outside of the usual scope of books, so to speak. But so they all weave into sort of, the ancient history stuff. But as far as the classics, I kind of just tried to go with vibes, I guess, and kind of what I would have wanted to read. So for example, in May, I wanted to read The Three Musketeers, so I added Three Musketeers. In March, I wanted to read Master and Margarita, so that was the book for March for the Society Book Club. In May, we read Daughter of Crows which I guess doesn't entirely, I mean, Daughter of Crows, it's like 3. Oh, hold on a second. Hold on. I might have been onto something here, because in Daughter of Crows, you have like the 3 girls that are coming out of the academy. So it's like the 3 Furies, so to speak. And then 3 Musketeers. You have like 3 Musketeers kind of, you know, do their thing. So yeah, in March we read The Library of Emerlyn. I don't know how I would connect that to Master Margarita. I guess because in Master Margarita, the devil comes and starts wreaking havoc, and in The Library of Emerlyn, the main character comes and kind of starts to wreak havoc. So you know what I mean? Like, it's just, I kind of started pairing them with classics. So it's like, if I don't want to read one of the fantasy books, I have the option of like reading another book, so to speak. And I also tried to sort of like pair the books like within itself, within the classics. I tried to sort of pair the books and have it, I guess, make sense. Also with the months, I think I tried to have it make sense. Like, for example, like The Witch Daughter, which we're reading in October, I paired with Frankenstein, which we're reading in October. I mainly chose Frankenstein because A, I want to reread it, and also because October is like spooky month and Frankenstein's spooky. It's a spooky time. So I wanted to sort of, you know, expand on that a little bit. And The Witch Daughter has some elements of, I guess, prophecy in a sense. And Frankenstein's also called like the modern Prometheus. So there's some element of, you know, those kind of vibes, I guess. But yeah, so I kind of tried to pair them up. Obviously, they weren't like direct pairings, you know, but I guess it kind of, you know, like it kind of made it feel less intimidating in a sense. So, yeah. So that is, I guess, that's kind of it. As I said, some of my old advice definitely held up. I've expanded on some more things, so to speak. And yeah, that's kind of it. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments. As usual, comment, like, subscribe, do, you know, hit the bell icon, whatever. And let me know the books that are intimidating you, so to speak. And maybe I can give you some extended tips and tricks for that. Yeah. I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it's a long one and definitely a little out of my usual scope, but yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. Check out all my socials. I'll link whatever's, you know, applicable in the comment section and in the description box. It'll be in a pinned comment, and I will see you in the next one, my friends. And as usual, happy reading.